What? Oh my god. AR plush baby. What's she doing here? I'm gonna cry. I'm gonna cry. In the last 4 years worth of FNAF games, there's been some subtle or even blatant callback to sister location. This is one of the biggest mysteries of modern FNAF because it feels like Scott and Steelwool are desperately trying to tell us something. And it wasn't until now that I think I've figured it out. This year, sister location turned 9 years old, and in those 9 years, we've figured out a lot of stuff surrounding the game. But nothing compares to what I'm going to talk about today. There's details and clues that have been right in front of our faces that were completely overlooked for years until now. Let's get started. One thing that's always been weird to me about sister location is how sci-fi Scott suddenly took the series. Maybe you'll relate to this, but I've always found it weird how Afton was able to build a giant underground bunker directly beneath his house. How much did this cost? Where did he get the money to build this? And even if he did have the money, logistically, how would someone build something like this? Well, the answer is he didn't build it. It's been widely believed for a while now that William Afton was the businessman of Fazbear Entertainment, who handled all of the money, while his partner Henry was the creative genius, who designed and built the animatronics. This was backed up by the newest game, Secret of the Mimic, where we learned that while Henry was working with Edwin on the animatronics,
I got the change order from Hen last night. It would be so much easier to keep using the spring locks.
Afton was the one working on the business side of things. Throughout the game, we see Afton attempt to steal all of Edwin's employees and bankrupt his entire company. Afton eventually gets what he wants and owns all of Edwin's, quote, software development and the entire MCM catalog. But in this message, we learn that Afton doesn't just take Edwin's company, he takes all of Edwin's land. Quote, although we now technically own the land, we would never touch the house your parents built. This is important because this house that Edwin's parents built happens to have a bedroom that looks very similar to the FNAF 4 bedroom and a giant underground bunker directly beneath it. The house also sits on a hill, just like the Afton house. When Afton took over Edwin's land, he got access to a house on a hill with a built-in underground bunker directly beneath it. He even stole the toys right out of Edwin's son's room and gave them to his kids. Everything was stolen from Edwin. Need more proof? In Secret of the Mimic, when we first enter Edwin's underground bunker and get on the little ride, you can hear a song start playing in the background. This song is called Breathing Corridors and was created by Leon Riskin, Scott's go-to composer for all of the FNAF soundtracks. The song Breathing Corridors is actually about 3 minutes long, but since this little ride only lasts about a minute, we never actually get to hear the whole song in-game. So one day, while listening to the entire soundtrack, I noticed that Breathing Corridors is literally just a slowed down version of Venta Black from Sister Location. The songs are in the same exact key, have the same sound, and have that same 4-note motif. This was just the cherry on top of an already solid theory, but after realizing that Afton very likely stole Edwin's underground bunker and used it to create Sister Location, a lot more connections started to appear. In Secret of the Mimic, we meet Dispatch, who works for Fazbear Entertainment.
Hey buddy, this is Dispatch with Fazbear Entertainment. How are you feeling?
Dispatch is the one guiding us throughout the game, but shortly after we enter MCM, it's revealed that M1 from inside of Mixes takes over and starts mimicking Dispatch's voice.
Awesome. Glad to see you made it here without any complications whatsoever.
This is important because the Mixes machine containing M1 is located underground in Edwin's bunker. The same bunker that Afton would allegedly use to create Sister Location. This means that Afton seemingly would have access to an advanced AI that has the capability of sounding just like Dispatch.
Glad to see you made it here without any complications whatsoever.
Welcome to the first day of your exciting new career. I will be your personal guide to help you get started.
If you don't know already, Dispatch from Secret of the Mimic and Hand Unit from Sister Location actually share the same voice actor, Andy Field. While this isn't the first time a voice actor has played multiple roles in this franchise, this specific instance feels more intentional. I think it makes sense that when Afton took over Edwin's underground bunker, he also acquired F10N4, which is an AI that contained the voice of Dispatch. This could have been how Afton got the voice for Hand Unit, but I don't think that's all he got. I think Afton also got his hands on the Mimic program. Let me explain. In Security Breach, it's been basically confirmed that all of the Glamrock animatronics are using the Mimic program. This is heavily talked about in the Tales from the Pizzaplex books, but there's also proof for this in Security Breach itself. There is a whole section of the game where you enter an endoskeleton daycare. In this area, there are certain behaviors depicted on the doors. Good behavior gets a check mark, while bad behavior gets an X. This is where we're training the endoskeletons how to behave properly by showing them which behavior to mimic and which to not. It's an endo daycare because these endos are literally starting from scratch as if they're children and are being raised to be whatever character Fazbear wants them to be. This was confirmed in Help Wanted 2, where we got a whole minigame in the endo daycare. In this minigame, we are once again teaching a Glamrock endoskeleton the correct behavior to mimic. But at the beginning of this minigame, we hear a line that stuck out to me for a while now.
Welcome to the Playpen. Here, young animatronic endoskeletons learn how to associate with guests. Motivation chips encourage our youth to one day develop a personality and become the next Freddy, Chica, or TBD Pizzaplex star.
Motivation chips encourage our youth to one day develop a personality. What? When in any of the modern FNAF games have we ever heard of motivation chips? The game literally flat out tells us that these motivation chips are how we're able to teach the animatronics to develop a personality. That sounds exactly like what the Mimic program is supposed to be doing. To me, this one line is telling us that the Mimic program is put into the Glamrock animatronics through a chip. And it's this chip that gives them the ability to be trained and taught to develop certain personalities to then become the next
Freddy, Chica, or TBD Pizzaplex star.
After discovering this, I then looked back to see if these chips have been mentioned anywhere else. After we learned from Scott that Security Breach's story was all over the place, I thought there would be no way they planned this chip thing from the beginning. Until I found this. In Security Breach, you can find a duffel bag message titled Chica Report, where it says, quote, Chica's personality chip has always been a bit quirky, but the new pizza-flavored Monty Mystery Mix slushy syrup has adverse effects on her programming. She has attacked patrons, employees, and staff for it. It is recommended that Monty Mystery Mix should be recalled before we're inundated with lawsuits. In this message, they straight up just call it a personality chip. Whether it's officially called a personality chip or a motivation chip doesn't really matter. The important thing is that all the way back in Security Breach, there was mention of a singular chip that helps give each animatronic their personality. But that's not all. In the modern FNAF games, the Mimic has repeatedly taken the form of Helpy. In Security Breach Ruin, the Mimic speaks to Cassie through Helpy and successfully gets her to set it free by the end of the game. In Help Wanted 2, you can see Helpy on the screen in the main hub area, and throughout the game, he's giving us hints and encouraging us to progress. The thing is, progressing and beating the game normally gives you the bad ending, where Glitchtrap, aka the Mimic virus, wins. Helpy was purposely guiding us in the wrong direction, just like in Ruin. If you get the bad ending and come back to the main hub, Helpy is now sitting on a beach on vacation because his job is done. The Mimic virus won. As you probably know, you can get the good ending by going through Princess Quest and killing Glitchtrap once and for all. But if you try going back to the main hub after Glitchtrap is dead, Helpy isn't on vacation this time, he isn't even there anymore. That's because Helpy was once again tied to the Mimic virus. Now that Glitchtrap was gone, so was Helpy. So why does this matter? Well, this all actually ties into the first aid minigame, where we get to see Helpy in person. In a game where they solidify that the Mimic program represents itself as Helpy, while also reintroducing us to the idea of motivation or personality chips that seemingly house the Mimic program, I find it funny that if you open up Helpy's head in the first aid minigame, you can find a chip lodged in his brain. The fact that the chip is lodged in Helpy's brain makes me almost certain that this is our first look at the personality chip we've been hearing about for nearly 4 years now. But if you look closely at the chip, you might notice that we've actually seen this chip before. On night 5 of Sister Location, after punching the correct code into the keypad, a hatch opens on Baby's arm, revealing a little green chip. This chip looks exactly like the chip we find in Helpy's head. The same chip containing the Mimic program that might be being used in the Glamrocks can also be found in Baby. Granted, the chip we find in Helpy's head is a lot bigger than the one we find in Sister Location, but to me it is painfully obvious that they designed these chips to look similar. I just think that the one in Helpy's head is a newer version of the chip that's being mass-produced for the Glamrocks. These two chips might be the same chip, but just made decades apart from each other. Like we established earlier, Afton is in charge of the business side of things at Fazbear Entertainment. Afton is, at least we think, not a genius engineer like Henry. So if this is actually true, and Afton really did steal the Mimic program from Edwin, that would explain how he was able to create such advanced animatronics. So much so that even the board of Fazbear Entertainment was shocked at what Afton was able to achieve.
There's no doubting what you've achieved on a technical level. These are clearly state-of-the-art.
This might also explain why the Funtime animatronics are able to mimic voices, which we literally see happen in Sister Location.
You must let us inside the room.
You have to let me inside the room.
Either way, I think the modern FNAF games are clearly trying to tell us that the Mimic program is being stored in some kind of chip. So I was curious if in Secret of the Mimic I could find any proof of this being the case. We learn in the Tales books that Edwin created the Mimic program by literally just coding it. We even learn what coding language he used, a combination of Pascal and C. He then uploaded this code to the Mimic's computer. Quote, once Edwin had constructed the robot, he had built the computer for it. This he did by stealing hardware from some of his abandoned projects. So no mention of a singular Mimic chip in the books, but what we learned from Secret of the Mimic is that what happens in the books is different from what happens in the games. In the games, the Mimic program isn't necessarily tied to the Mimic endoskeleton. Edwin was putting the Mimic program into every single one of his inventions as well.
Another smart toy from Murray.
I am always watching and learning.
Our main goal in Secret of the Mimic is to retrieve the Mimic blueprints for Fazbear Entertainment. And towards the end of the game, we actually manage to reach Edwin's office and gain access to the blueprints. But right before we download them onto our data diver, we can see that Edwin called the blueprints the Mimic blueprints, with the obvious reveal being that Mimic is actually an acronym. In true FNAF fashion, Secret of the Mimic gave us the answer to the MIX's acronym from Ruin, Mechanical X-Form Experimental Storage, but in return gave us a new mystery in the Mimic acronym. This is one of those things that feels nearly impossible to figure out, especially because no one would have ever guessed what MIX's ended up standing for. The fact that Mimic is an acronym is interesting because throughout the entire game, Edwin always called the Mimic endoskeleton M1.
I want to introduce you to someone. This is M1.
We never once hear Edwin call it the Mimic endoskeleton. Since these blueprints aren't called the M1 blueprints, what if they're not blueprints for the physical Mimic, but for the Mimic chip? This would mean the C on the end of the acronym could stand for chip. I could also see it starting with something like Murray's and ending with integrated circuit, since integrated circuits are chips typically designed to store and run programs. So if these blueprints really are for the Mimic chip, how would Afton get his hands on them? Well, for that to happen, the escape ending of the game would have to be the canon one. In this ending, we willingly give the Mimic blueprints to M1 and go home. Afton would then gain access to M1 and the blueprints once he takes over Edwin's bunker. This ending feels like the canon one for a few reasons. First, it is absolutely in character for Arnold to want to finish the job and get out of there as soon as possible. Second, in the parachute ending, everything including Edwin's house and the bunker get destroyed. If this happened, it would be a lot harder for Afton to move in and build Sister Location. There's also the fact that Afton uses the same toys as Edwin for his kids, and if the whole place burned to the ground, those toys would be destroyed and unable to be reused. There's also the third ending where we defeat the Mimic, but that's unlikely to be canon since we know this isn't the end for the Mimic. Little did Arnold know that giving the blueprints to M1 and driving away inadvertently might have given Afton access to the Mimic program, a giant underground bunker, and a familiar AI voice to greet workers who decide to visit.
Welcome to the first day of your exciting new career.
One thing that I want to make clear is that I do not think Scott had the Mimic in mind when making Sister Location. If this chip in Baby's arm really does contain the Mimic virus, that would mean that Scott and Steelwool went back and made that chip more important than it originally was. This is how FNAF always has worked. Scott builds on things that he puts in his previous games. As always, for any theory, I could be completely wrong about all of this, especially the idea that the Mimic blueprints are for the Mimic chip and not the endoskeleton. I do think, though, that the personality chip is something we've completely overlooked, and I'm excited to see if that goes anywhere. Either way, subscribe if you enjoyed, and thanks for watching.